Daniel Penny is facing manslaughter charges for the choking death of Jordan Neely. This was something that for a lot of New Yorkers and people who have been New Yorkers and spent a ton of time in the New York subway like me, there are very strong feelings about this. Penny's a Marine, and he gave for the first time, he came forward and released a video. I think he realizes that the politics of this are going to affect, and the perception of it's very much going to affect the outcome. So he's put a video out where he describes what it was like that day when Neely came on the subway. I would just note for all of you before we hear from Penny from this video, he says that, or it should be pointed out that the media has been trying to convince everybody, the CNN and others, that Jordan Neely was a beloved Michael Jackson impersonator. That was the story they were going with. What they left out is that Jordan Neely had recently punched an elderly woman in the face, shattering her nose and her eye socket. That Jordan Neely had been arrested many, many times over the years and was known to menace people on the subway system. And that's in a subway system where I would note, in case anyone's hasn't seen this, just over the weekend, this story broke where a 29-year-old woman on Friday, 9 p.m., so after this show finished airing, at 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday, the Chambers Street subway station, a subway station I've spent a ton of time in, a woman had to fight off a stranger who exposed himself to her in a subway car, punched her, pinned her to the ground, and tried to rape her. The man escaped. She was able to fight him off, but obviously she had injuries. He punched her in the face. He escaped. He is described as a man with a dark complexion between the ages of 30 and 40, 5'6" tall, wearing a sweatshirt and pants. That's the full description they gave of him. But this is what it's like to be on the subway, Clay, for people these days. 29-year-old woman, some crazy guy pulls his pants down, punches her in the face, and tries to rape her right there on that's a Chambers Street subway. That's a very crowded, 9 o'clock on a Friday night. All right? So that's the reality of New York these days for everybody. That just happened. Daniel Penny saw a lunatic threatening people, and so he decided to step in and do something, and he's put out a video where he's telling you this is what it was like on that subway. Play it.
You can see in the video there's a clear rise and fall of his chest, indicating that he's breathing. I'm trying to restrain him from him being able to carry out the threats. And then some people say that this was about race, which is absolutely ridiculous. I didn't see a black man threatening passengers. I saw a man threatening passengers, a lot of whom were people of color. The man who helped restrain Mr. Neely was a person of color. And then a few days after the incident, I read in the papers that a woman of color came out and called me a hero. I don't believe that I'm a hero, but she was one of those people that I was trying to protect.
I think that Daniel Penny is a heroic guy. He wasn't trying to kill Jordan Neely. He makes that clear. He says he was just applying the force necessary to get him to stop being a threat. And Clay, this guy was running around the subway, according to other eyewitnesses, threatening to kill people and saying he would go to jail. And he is a violent criminal with a long criminal history. So the New York DA wants you to wait and see if you get stabbed in the face before you can do anything. That's the rule now in New York.
Look, the reason he got charged because he's white. I mean, this is the reality. And this, to me, ties in with the Trump case as well, Buck. Because what we have is an anecdote and narrative-driven Justice Department in many parts of this country. And what I mean by that is it's not the facts. It's not the consistent application of justice, no matter who the person is. It's a design and then a search for a narrative to fulfill the design. And let me explain exactly what I mean by that. When Joe Biden comes out and says domestic extremism, right-wing terrorists, white supremacists are the biggest threat that exists in this country, he is grabbing his megaphone and yelling that to every prosecutor and every investigator anywhere in the country. And if you are told by your boss that this is the priority, you are going to go out and you are going to find evidence that supports the premise under which he's making the case, even if it is not justified by the raw data. And that's the case with Daniel Penny. I would submit to you that if this is a black guy that is putting this guy in a chokehold, none of us ever hear about it. Not only does this story not result in charges, not one person listening to us right now even knows it happens. Because black on black violence almost never makes the news. The only reason this is a story and the only reason these are charges that were brought is because Daniel Penny's a white guy. Same thing happened with Donald Trump. The only reason Donald Trump is getting charged is because of his political background, right? Now, you can argue, as we did, that Trump behaved in a reckless fashion to allow himself to be charged because they were going through everything he had done with a fine-tooth comb, trying to find something to get him on. But that is what happens when narrative overtakes justice, Buck. There's a reason why Lady Justice is blind. Go look at the scales of justice. You should not be applying justice based on the identity of the accused.
There is a huge incentive for the Democrat Party and the Democrat machinery to constantly create this fear of white racist violence all the time. The biggest threat to the country. Joe Biden went to a historically black college and said white nationalism or white supremacy is the biggest threat to America right now. That's the president of the United States saying that. What is this rooted in? Where is this actually happening? Well, as we know, it's actually quite rare that there is an incident of interracial violence where a white person kills a black person in a criminal context. It's actually statistically quite rare. Most violent crime is within the same race. But if you're looking at interracial crime, as Elon Musk shared the data on this, it is disproportionately 10-1 black on white. That's statistics, FBI, you can look at that. The Democrat Party, remember when Elon shared that, they all, oh my gosh, he was sharing FBI.gov data. If you want to have a conversation about what's happening based on data, I think we should all be able to look at and discuss the data. No one denies that's the data. You know what they did, Clay? They started talking about intra-racial. Well, hold on. That wasn't the conversation. The conversation was interracial violence that Elon Musk was weighing in on. Okay. So in this case, though, I think why it's so important for Daniel Penny, I think it's somewhat unusual for someone to make a statement like this when they're under indictment, they're facing manslaughter charges. Yeah. But he did it, and it's out there, and here's what he wants everyone to know, though, because the media doesn't want people to know this. Jordan Neely was not just threatening to murder people. He was threatening to murder people, including black and brown people, on that subway car, meaning this was about fellow human beings, right? This is about people of all different races. This is what he's saying. Also, one of the individuals who helped hold Jordan Neely down was a black guy. So the narrative of racism here becomes really complicated. Daniel Penny steps in to stop a guy from threatening to kill people, including black and brown people. And the guy who helps him hold Jordan Neely down is a black guy. So the racism narrative, you have to work really hard to try to find this as a racist incident, which is the whole basis for Bragg's prosecution here, and we all know it.
Yeah, and Buck, the data actually reflects, and again, this goes to the data, this is the factual evidence, and I bet in the back of Daniel Neely's head, even if he doesn't acknowledge it, police are actually less likely to use violence against black defendants as a percentage of violent acts. It's a big Harvard study they did.
Yeah, the left hates that, and they try to undermine that study all the time now, but it was a big study, yes.
Yeah, why would that be the case? It's because there are, I think, probably a lot of police listening to us right now that know that they're going to be held, if you're a white guy, to a different standard if you use violence against a black person than you would be if you use violence against a white person. Because again, Buck, it's not only that Daniel Penny is getting charged because he's a white guy who choked a black guy. It's that if he had choked a white guy out, this wouldn't be a story either, right? The only way this becomes a story is if a white guy does this to a black guy. Black guy does it to a black guy, nobody pays attention. In black-on-black violence happens so frequently, the media never covers it. White, crazy guy. Daniel Penny puts him in a chokehold and he dies. 1,000,000,000%, Buck. This never becomes a story either. The only reason, I would love to hear people who are in media try to justify this, because, Buck, the argument they would make is, well, systemic racism is such an ever-present reality that when we see acts like these, we must call them out and cover them. But to your point, it actually is a wildly outlier incident that isn't actually representative of danger that exists in New York City or any city in America. Black people, by and large, have almost nothing to fear from white people if you just look at it on a data basis. And by the way, almost none of us have anything at all to fear from police either. I always like to use this stat, Buck, because it blows people's minds. You know, if you're an unarmed person in America today, regardless of your race, but including if you're black, white, Asian, or Hispanic, you are more likely to be killed by a bee, wasp, or a hornet than you are by a police officer. That blows people's minds. Unarmed, right? Because you're not then trying to typically create any sort of issue with a weapon. Would you ever be afraid to walk outside of your house because you were afraid that you were going to get stung by a bee and die? Of course not. We fear things that aren't real because of the media.
I remember after Ferguson, Don Lemon, formerly of CNN, said that, and he was crying when he said this, that some nights when he goes home, he calls his mom just to let her know that he got home safe because he's so scared about police violence against him. Don Lemon said that, who lives in a, I don't know, I would just put it out there, probably a $4 or $5 million apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I think he's okay walking home. I don't think the cops are coming for Don, but this is what it is. It's, oh, I'm a victim. I'm a victim. It's so scary. The cops are a victim of the cops. Meanwhile, there are lunatics running around the city, stabbing people, raping people, doing crazy stuff. But it's the cops and it's white racism that's the problem. That's what we're
There's
told.
another good one here. Don Lemon connected in some ways. One of ESPN's highest paid announcers is a guy named Mark Jones. He's lost his mind. He's super racist. In the wake of the George Floyd incident, Buck, he went on social media and he said he would no longer accept a police escort on college campuses when he called a game because he didn't know when a police officer would decide to kill him.
This is what I mean. I mean, this is a maniacal, really like a faith-based belief that people have bought into, this cult-like ideology of the threat of white racism killing them or the threat of police killing them. This is completely insane.
Think about that, Buck. These guys, for people out there who are sports fans, you get a police escort so you don't have to sit in traffic, so you can go into the stadium and call the game, and then you get a police escort when you leave so you can get to the airport faster. He said he wouldn't, I don't know if he's accepting it or not, he said he wouldn't accept a police escort anymore because he was afraid that a police officer would kill him. What, in the press box while you're calling a game? When they're helping to dodge you through all the traffic so you can manage to get in and out of the stadium as safely and expeditiously as possible?
We'll take police escorts anytime. Anytime
Amen.
You want to help us out, go for it.
Anybody wants to give me a police escort anywhere at any time, I will gladly accept it.